Welcome to another episode of the Abbotsford Farm Podcast. It is not a farming podcast. It is your favorite Abbotsford Canucks podcast, brought to you in part by Black Press Media and the Abbotsford News. I'm Tim Dickert here with Ben Lypka, as always. Ben, just like we're like right in it now, right? Like we're in the swing of the season.
It's not a farming podcast yet. We don't want to we don't want to exclude the farming people, but the first weekend was a lot of fun. The first game on Friday, I've covered tons of events. I've been to all sorts of things throughout my career, and that was definitely up there. Just the atmosphere. It was a 50% capacity crowd, but it felt like 100. Like the crowd was on fire all night.
Yeah, talk to me about like how it felt. Like you walk in there. Like are most people wearing Vancouver Canucks jerseys? Are there some people wearing the new jerseys? What was the like vibe when you come into the building?
There was a lot of Canucks jerseys. Yeah, it was kind of a mix. There were people wearing Abbotsford stuff, but there was a buzz. Like it was a kind of a really unique atmosphere, especially for the first game. And what it felt to me is like I've been to a lot of Canucks games. It felt identical to a Vancouver Canucks game. And that, like, from Al Murdoch was on the mic. He was introducing the players. He was calling all the goals. Just the feel of the intermission, the feel of some of the in-game features. Like I said, I've been to a bunch of Vancouver Canucks games. This felt very, very similar, and obviously at a lot less price to a Vancouver Canucks game. But it felt very similar. It felt like you were at Rogers Arena.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it was, the only difference was I've been to Vancouver Canucks games where the crowd is dead, and that happens a lot. So unfortunately, that does happen a lot. But this crowd was, it's a very knowledgeable crowd. There were a lot of families. It felt like to me, a lot of kids were there, and it was just a lot of excitement. It was a lot of fun. The opening game festivities, they didn't really tell anyone what was going on, but when the Sedin showed up, it wasn't a huge surprise. It was a pretty big reaction. It was surprising to me. Stan Smeal was there, and we had some First Nation representation. So that was all extremely well done, I thought. And it was really memorable.
That's one of the things that I noticed going to Vancouver Canucks games, and I probably didn't notice it until I was a parent. But, when you go to a Vancouver Canucks game, there's not that many kids there, right? Like there's just not a lot of families who go, because if you're going to go with your whole family, you're looking at $300 if you're sitting in the nosebleeds, right? Yeah. And I remembered the first time I went to a Giants game when they were in Langley, I immediately noticed that how many more kids were there. There were kids running around, how many families were there. And I think that I'm really excited that you mentioned that feel of the stadium, because that was something that, like you say, is missing from Vancouver Canucks games. And I think it's one of the things that Abbotsford is really going to benefit from by having families in the stands and having kids in the stands. Now, I know for people who don't have kids, who don't like hang around lots of kids, maybe you just want to have your beer, your food, watch the hockey game. But there's like an excitement that kids bring to the room. And so there's going to be an excitement in the building by having families who are like so psyched to be there, who don't care about analytics, who don't care about, controlled zone exits, who don't care about how the last 5 games have gone. They're just so happy to be at the event, excited to be there, and they're going to cheer their faces off. And I think you're right. I think that Abbotsford is going to have an experience and a fan experience that is unique to itself, certainly different than what you're going to get from seeing a Vancouver Canucks games. And I think that is only going to be a positive. So that's really exciting to me that was present on day one.
Yeah, it's like with little kids, like it's like you're seeing a superhero a lot of times. Like,
yeah,
the guys, you see these guys on TV, and now you get to experience them firsthand. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that there were some very smart fans there too. There were some rowdy fans too, which is another thing you don't really see. I haven't seen in the last few Vancouver Canucks games I've been to. They were extremely hard on some of the goalies, the opposition, chanting his name. And you don't really, I don't know. You don't really feel that kind of interaction, especially down low at the Vancouver Canucks games. Maybe up higher, you get a little bit more loud, but I mean, the atmosphere was a lot better than a normal Vancouver Canucks games from what I saw.
That's awesome to hear. And I think it probably helps too that the Abbotsford Canucks come away with 2 wins on their first homestand.
Yeah, that didn't hurt. Yeah, the first game, and they were both they were very competitive games. They were close games. And yeah, it's the second game, the game on Sunday was Artur Silovs, who's a guy who's kind of emerging, as a lot of people seem to be talking about him now. He didn't really get challenged a whole lot, but he stopped everything that he faced. He got the shutout. So that was interesting to see. But they were both pretty competitive games. And yeah, winning always helps.
And who did anyone stand out for you? I mean, I think we need to talk about some of the ways we're already seeing the NHL team affecting the AHL team, but we'll get to that in a second. But who stood out for you? Obviously, Silovs stood out in nets. He gets the shutout. But did anyone stand out for you, seeing them in person as opposed to seeing them on TV? As someone like, wow, their impact. You can really tell when you're there live in the rink.
Yeah, Justin Bailey, and obviously the Vancouver Canucks noticed him too. We've already lost the guy, but he was like, anytime he touched the puck on Friday or also on Sunday, like his speed is almost unfair for the AHL. And I was talking to some of the other guys in the media about that, and they were pretty blown away by just how dominant. Like when he grabbed the puck, he could pretty much do whatever he wanted with it. So he was really dominant. He's a big guy as well. He's 6'4", so he laid a few really nice hits. So definitely Bailey was one of the guys that stood out. Nick Patan, especially on Sunday. Again, he's a guy with a lot of speed. And again, he also got recalled today. So the Vancouver Canucks are watching too. But I'm trying to think, like the defense overall was really solid. Like they moved the puck really well. I thought Noah Juleson, like he's a huge fan favorite. During the introductions, he got a massive applause.
Well, he's from Abbotsford, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's an Abbotsford guy. Went to high school out here, so he got a huge reaction. And I did talk to Trent Call a little bit about Juleson, and like Call loves the guy. You can tell he really likes him because he's a basic defenseman. He moves the puck forward. He's tough. He plays with an edge. He took a few penalties, but they weren't penalties that I'd be concerned about. They're penalties that are trying to dictate the game a little bit. So. He was another really solid player over the first 2 games. But the defense overall was good though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you get a shutout. It doesn't not just the goalie standing on the head, right? Well, let's talk about that then. So Josh Bailey immediately makes an impact with the team. He's top 10 in AHL scoring. He gets called up. We've Nick Patan came down, played 1 game, 2 games?
I think it was 1.
And we've seen just this morning, Friday morning, that Nick Patan has been recalled by the Vancouver Canucks. So he'll be playing in Vancouver this weekend. And we've also seen go the other way, Travis Hamonic finally joining the team with whatever he's working through. And he's been practicing with the Abbotsford Canucks. And will he play this weekend? We don't know yet. Hopefully we'll find out in the next little bit here. But I mean, we talked in our first episode about the fluctuations and the roster chaos of the AHL. And we're seeing it now. You saw Josh Bailey and you were excited about him. He could do whatever he wanted with the puck. And now he's going to the NHL, which is probably where he's a better fit. But we're going to watch the Vancouver Canucks, and maybe he doesn't stand out anymore. And so it's interesting how the team is going to have to deal with this, and how as fans we're going to have to adjust our expectations of the players and the team on the whole based on who's back in the roster and who's not.
Yeah, the Harman situation was pretty interesting. I know we were behind the scenes. We were recording something earlier this week, and Tim told me about the big scoop.
Well, come on, I'm tied in. I'm tied in with what's going on.
You're an award-winning journalist too. But so he rejoined the team. Everything's been settled. Whatever was settled before, they haven't really explained anything that's happened as far as that goes. But he's been practicing here. He's been conditioning here. It's not clear if he's going to play. Like, we don't know. There hasn't been any lineup release. There's been no details as far as that goes. So it's kind of, I guess we'll see what happens tonight. Like, if he's playing, I have no idea if he's playing or not. So I think you probably want him to play a few games before he goes up to the NHL, I would guess, but we'll find out this weekend.
Yeah. And you know what? Obviously that'd be great for the Abbotsford Canucks. But we shouldn't get too attached to him, right? He's going to the NHL team for sure. So, two big wins on the weekend. The team overall is sitting pretty nicely with 3 wins, 2 losses. Overall, that's a pretty good start for a brand new team. But coming up this weekend, playing the Ontario Reign, which isn't super confusing to you also that it's Ontario, California.
Well, I'll be honest. It was initially, but I'm a wrestling fan. So I'm like, Monday Night Raw has been in Ontario, California, and they've referred to Ontario. So that's why it wasn't that big of a deal to me. And when I first heard about Ontario, California, I looked into it. So I was aware of Ontario, California. Their arena's pretty nice, but I totally understand why everybody else speaks. It's especially in hockey. And I talked to Josh Schaefer, the voice of the Reign, about this. Because, I mean, when you think Ontario, you think the province in Canada. You don't think California and sun and beach and the LA.
Yeah, I was so confused as to why they were in the Pacific Division. And then I did one Google search and it figured it out. But yeah. So I spoke to Josh earlier this week. And I wanted to say too, I know a lot of people had the free AHL preview earlier this month, and I thought the Ontario Reign team, Josh and his partner, did an excellent job. Their production was great. So, and they seemed to know what they were talking about, which I really enjoyed. And I think everyone at Abbotsford enjoyed the work they did on the games when Abbotsford was in town. So yeah, I spoke to him about the expectations for this weekend and how the Reign are looking early on into this season. So we'll head to that. So I'm joined now by Josh Schaefer, the play-by-play voice of the Ontario Reign. Josh, thanks so much for taking the time today. How are you?
I'm good, Ben. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I guess, first of all, the first thing I wanted to get into, and you guys have probably heard of it, where is Ontario? Because as you probably know, Ontario is a province in Canada. And I know you guys mentioned on the broadcast that a lot of people seem to wonder, is it the province in Canada? Is it in California? So maybe for our listeners and people who may have no idea, where is Ontario?
So Ontario is in Southern California. It's located in the Inland Empire, which is just inland from Los Angeles. So it is obviously primary affiliate of the Los Angeles Kings. There used to be an ECHL team here in Ontario. The original Ontario Reign were in the ECHL. And then after Manchester won the Calder Cup in 2015, the team, the affiliations stayed the same, but they kind of switched leagues. So the ECHL Ontario Reign became the ECHL Manchester Monarchs, and then the Manchester Monarchs in the AHL became the AHL Ontario Reign. So we're located in Ontario, California. It's in the Inland Empire. It's about, it depends what time of day you're trying to get to and from LA or Ontario, but anywhere between 50 to kind of 90 minutes east of Los Angeles.
And I was doing a little bit of research, and I guess the original name does come from the Ontario province. I don't know if you know anything about that.
No, I didn't know that. But, it's definitely something that is kind of confusing, especially in the hockey world. I have friends who are journalists or in broadcasting from other places, not from Southern California, who are not hockey fans that thought Ontario, Canada too, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. You need to take brush up on some Canadian history courses. I took one.
Yeah.
It was not that exciting.
I feel like my geography is pretty good, but the history maybe I can do a little bit more.
Yeah. First of all, I guess what are your thoughts on Ontario so far? You guys are off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, the team's off, to its best start through 5 games at least. So I mean, we'll pump the brakes a little bit, but all things considered, it's the team's best start through 5 games since their first year in the AHL back in 2015-16. They were 5-0-0 at the time, and that team started through 10 games. They were 7-1-2. So right now 4-0-0-1 technically.
Yeah.
But they look pretty good. We've been super impressed with what we've seen from the team so far. It seems like each game you're getting somebody new stepping up and kind of taking over, where you have, the goaltending, all things considered, has been really good. TJ Kynan, the reigning AHL MVP, has been pretty good despite not even scoring a goal yet, but he was tied for the league lead in points through the first 4 games. So he's been a player that's kind of, taken charge in each game, and Brett Sutter's been good, the team captain. But for the most part, it seems like there's been a new player each game that has stepped into the spotlight and has done really well. And that's a really good thing to see when you have a team with so many prospects that is supposed to be very deep this year. But also something that we've noticed from the first 5 games is every single game through the first 5 has been different. Yeah, everything's been a little bit different. The team has been put into different situations. First game of the year, they build a lead, are forced to kill off a 6-on-5, score on the empty net, put things away, score a couple power play goals. They win 5-2. And then back-to-back games with Abbotsford, obviously. One of them goes to overtime. One of them goes to a shootout. I guess they both went to overtime, but one of them went to a shootout. So those were 2 new situations for the team. A couple games later, they play Bakersfield, and it comes down to killing off a 6-on-5 at the end of the game, and somebody made a sliding shot block to deny a scoring chance as time expired. It's been something new each game that they've had to deal with. So sure, you're off to a great start through your first 5 games, but you haven't played a road game yet. So this weekend, you're coming up, and it's a new challenge again, and it's your first road game.
And you have to cross the border too.
Yep. First time an LA Kings affiliate has crossed over the border since it's been 3 years. And it was the last time they played the Manitoba Moose. It was actually, I actually don't have my note in front of me, but it was either 3 or 4 years ago since they played the Moose. But that's the last time the Reign have traveled north of the border.
Yeah, one guy that I was kind of interested in was Alex Turcotte. Just wondering how you think he's played. He's a guy that he was 5th overall pick in 2019, and he was a guy that we have a lot of Vancouver Canucks listeners. He was a guy that was sort of in the discussion. I know they were interested in him the year they picked Podkolzin. So yeah, what have you seen from him, and how do you think he's sort of fitting in this year?
He was a player that really settled into the team last year. Much like Quinton Byfield, maybe didn't have the best start to the season in the shortened year. And Byfield's a different story. Byfield was not supposed to play in the AHL last year. And the Kings organization was, they benefited from the OHL not playing. So that's what helped Byfield settle into his current position with the organization before his injury. But in a similar way, Turcotte struggled a little bit at the beginning of the season and really settled in nicely. And as the season went on, he was starting to rack up the points a little bit. He had his first pro hat trick towards the end of the season. And this year he stepped into a position where he's kind of said, I'm comfortable being a leader and I'm comfortable being vocal, even though he's one of the youngest guys on the team, which is something that you don't see a whole lot of. And I think that guys like Byfield and Sean Dursey and Turcotte settle into that kind of role where you can be one of the younger guys, but still be a leader on the team. And of course, a couple of games ago, he had 3 assists. So he started to settle in earlier than he did last year. Obviously, it's only been 5 games, but through the first couple of games, we've seen him on a line with a few different players, but most notably, we saw him with Tyler Madden, who's a name that obviously I know you guys know, and Austin Wagner, who spent all of last year and part of the season before with the LA Kings. So he's got 2 very quick playmakers on the wings, and he's centering that line. So there's a lot of opportunity for Alex to get involved in plays, to facilitate offense a little bit, and also obviously get on the score sheet, which is what he did the other day. First time he was on a line with Madden and Wagner, and he had 3 assists.
Nice. Yeah. He was he showed a lot of flashes in the Abbotsford games, but there were times where it seemed like he wasn't super noticeable. So yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how he does this weekend. Those two games in Abbotsford, what were your takeaways from those two games? You mentioned they were both went to overtime. They were both really close, but what did you take from the Abbotsford team, and what do you think Ontario kind of learned from those two games?
Well, I felt without having a lot of extracurricular stuff after whistles and things like that, I felt like it was two very gritty games. I think both teams, especially Ontario, you know, from the Reign perspective, learned a lot about themselves after that first game. And then going into the second one, it was kind of, you know, like I said, it was a new situation. So from an Ontario perspective, as I'm sure the Canucks can relate to as well, you know, second game of the season and you're going to overtime and you're thinking, all right, so from a broadcast standpoint, I'm looking at this saying, all right, well, who are we going to see? 3-on-3, who are we going to see? Oh, you get a power play in overtime. Who's going to be on the power play? So it's things like that. And then it goes to a shootout and you're thinking, who are you going to see in the shootout? Because there's obviously a lot of skilled players on the Reign. So I think the Reign learned a lot about themselves in those two games with two situations where you weren't super familiar with. After the first game, you go to overtime, you get the power play, you don't score, and then you lose in a shootout. And the Reign have skill players galore. I mean, you'd think that they would not just win shootouts, but score a goal in the shootout. And then the next game, same situation. You go to overtime, you get a power play, and things went right in overtime in that second game. So it's kind of just learning a little bit more about yourselves and what the team brings to the table and kind of seeing what you did wrong. And that seemed to be the mood after the game was, you know, keep getting those opportunities, learn from what you did last time. And it was also the first time we had to see the Reign come from behind in the final 2 minutes and pull the goaltender and score at the end of the game. So I thought it was a really good series. I didn't really know what to expect from Abbotsford early on. Obviously they had played their first game, you know, the night before or 2 nights before, whatever it was. So still looking for that first win, but you know, last year Utica was good in some aspects, struggled in other aspects. So it was kind of interesting to see what are you going to get from the Canucks early on this year. I was impressed. It seemed like it was a very close 2-game series, and I'm excited to see what we get this weekend. And I'm sure there's probably going to be a pretty big turnout up in Abbotsford.
Totally, yeah. From the first 2 games, what have there been many roster changes with Ontario?
A few in the preseason. There have been a couple injuries with the Kings, and in the preseason, Arthur Kaliev impressed for LA. He had a hat trick against Anaheim on the road when the Kings were down 3-0. They came back and won 6-3 on the back of a Kaliev hat trick. So Kaliev was called up. Rasmus Kupari was called up. At the time of recording our chat, it seems like the two of them will be on their way back to Ontario shortly. I do not know what that means for the Kings roster moving forward, but there are a few players who have been hurt that might be coming back. So it's definitely beneficial to have both teams practicing out of the same building in El Segundo out in LA. So those two guys have been with the Kings. They've been playing the last few games with LA, and they'll be back down with Ontario supposedly. And then with a couple injuries to one, Drew Doughty got hurt a couple nights ago. So the Kings called up Austin Strand. He looked pretty good a couple nights ago against Bakersfield, and then was called up to the Kings. He'd logged some games last year, especially at the beginning of the season. He's a big righty defenseman who, if he was lefty, would probably have had more opportunities up to this point just because the Kings have so many righty defensemen. But he's a very reliable blue liner. And then there was also an injury to Sean Walker a few nights ago, or last night at the time of recording. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of moves are made at that point. I don't know the extent of the injury. You know, that's not my place to say anyway, but I don't know the extent of the injury. I don't know what the plans are to call somebody up. But I would guess that there will be some movement. And then today the Kings also announced that goaltender Jacob Ingham is going to be loaned back out to Greenville in the ECHL, which is where he spent most of last season. The Kings also have another goaltender there, John Letherman. He's a Michigan State guy, and he's a little bit older, so he's 25, so he's older than a lot of the other goalies in the organization, goalie prospects. But there's been some movement. I don't think we'll see as much as we saw last year, But last year was a weird year, and you had the rain playing out of the Kings practice facility in El Segundo. So it was very easy for Kings and Reign staff to be at games, be at practices every single day, maybe even easier than it is now.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, we're recording this on Tuesday. So for Abbotsford, I know Justin Bailey just got called up, and he's looked great for Abbotsford early on. And there were a couple of reports out of practice that Michael DiPietro wasn't there. So, and he did not play on Sunday. So maybe there could be some sort of issue there. We're not totally sure as far as that goes. Are you traveling to Abbotsford, or do you travel with the team?
We will have the Reign insider, Jared Schaefer. He'll be there this week. So he goes to all the road games. From a broadcast perspective, we are going to pick out a few road trips to do this year. And then we'll do all the playoff games, all the road playoff games. As of right now, we don't have any road trips on the books for broadcasts yet. We're still trying to work that out. It's a little bit early, but we do every home game, and then we'll do a couple of select series throughout the season. And then the San Diego games are very easy, especially if they're on weekends. So those are something that we'll likely do as well.
Yeah, I was looking at some of your past on your resume. So you called baseball as well. So I'm wondering, going from baseball to hockey, like, how was that adjustment, and what do you enjoy more? Because I know, hockey is a lot more fast paced.
Yeah, I actually think baseball is harder.
Really?
So that's
more storytelling, right?
Yeah, so it's more storytelling, and you know, in hockey, you can have a 4-0 blowout, right? And the game is still going to dictate the broadcast, right? In which it always should, but you're in a little bit more control when you're doing a baseball game. And, you know, when a 4-0 baseball game is still relatively close, maybe more so than a 4-0 hockey game. But if you're calling a baseball game and it's 10-0, the game still is going to be played. The broadcast is still going to continue. So you've got to have something to talk about, which is why I plan on being over prepared for everything. I've done a ton of baseball. I did hockey at Arizona State for the Division I hockey program at ASU. I've done a little bit of everything. Nice. But baseball is one of the sports I've called the most of, probably baseball and hockey. But yeah, baseball was something I did in high school, did at ASU. I worked in the California League for a little bit, and then in the Cape Cod League. So that's where I've probably done the most work, and then hockey all at ASU and here with the Ontario Reign.
Yeah, and then as a Canadian, we're always kind of obsessed with how popular hockey is, and is the game growing? And that's kind of something we think about a lot. In Arizona, what's the feel? What's your feel on the game down there?
I definitely think it is growing. I think that Arizona has quietly been a hotbed for hockey for a really long time, all the way back to when the Coyotes first came around. Arizona State's rink is Oceanside Ice Arena. It's where they played the last couple of years. It is essentially a community rink. It was there before ASU hockey had a Division I program, long before ASU hockey had a Division I program. And it was a building where teams in the NHL going out to LA would stop in Arizona. They'd practice at Oceanside Ice Arena, and then they would keep going on to LA. And there's a history of the Phoenix Roadrunners, which kind of inspired the name for the Tucson Roadrunners in the AHL, and inspired the logo a little bit. So I think that Arizona's very quietly been a hockey hotbed. I mean, Austin Matthews is from Phoenix.
Yeah. Just to say that.
Yeah. Austin Matthews is from Phoenix. There are a handful of ASU players were actually homegrown guys. Even the guys that went elsewhere to play in juniors, at least for a little bit, and then came back, or had moved to Minnesota for a time and then had come back. I think hockey, especially youth hockey, is continuing to grow in Arizona. I'd like to see that a little bit more for the Coyotes. I think that does depend on, like how competitive the team is. But ASU is the ASU Division I program will be moving into a brand new facility next year. It's supposed to be a 4,000 or 5,000 seat arena. It's going to be on campus as opposed to the other one, which is, 5-10 minutes north of campus. But they're putting a 5,000 seat building on campus to compete at the D1 level, brand new press box, locker rooms, practice facility. And I believe they will also have gymnastics and wrestling operating out of the same building. So they'll have the basketball arena and the hockey arena across the street from one another. And I know that they're really excited about that out in Tempe.
That was Ben Lypka chatting with Josh Schaefer from the Ontario Reign broadcast team. I think we're in for a good matchup this weekend. I mean, the Canucks split the 2 games with the rain that they played earlier this season. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. I wonder if the home cooking will make the Canucks give them an advantage. Maybe, who knows?
And I think it's going to be an overtime game because the first 2 games, one went to a shootout, one went to overtime. So we're probably going to get some more extra hockey, which means more late nights for me. I'm not complaining though. I'm not complaining.
Free hockey. Come on. Yeah. Free hockey.
Exactly.
So the opening weekend obviously was a huge success for the Abbotsford Canucks. And you know, it's a brand new franchise. So many things are firsts. So many firsts are happening every game almost. You know, it's first goal, first win, first shootout win, first shutout. And on the weekend, the Abbotsford Canucks had their first in-stadium proposal.
Yeah, that it was and we talk about it during the interview obviously, but it was bizarre. I was down in near the penalty box, and it was during a break, and it was kind of not much going on. And then on the screen it was, and I explained this in the interview, they had this thing, it was like show your smile, take down your mask and show your smile. And it was really weird, especially during a pandemic. I didn't understand why they were promoting that. Eventually it led to the proposal, which it was very surprising, and I think people really enjoyed it. And I took a picture quickly of him going down on one knee and all that, and tweeted it out. And it turns out that the man actually followed me on Twitter. He's a massive Canucks fan, and we kind of got in touch through there.
And now joining us are the happy couple themselves, Harman, Aujla, and Alisha. Neger, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Obviously, you know, first home game, brand new franchise, first in stands during the game proposal. This is, I mean, you guys are part of history.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool to think, right? Finally, we got the right team in the house, and hopefully they're here for a while, and it ends up being something that sticks.
Yeah, I mean, when they're at the end of the year, you know, when they're at the end of the season and they're doing like the video package of all the big highlights of the first year in Abbotsford, you know, you guys are part of that now, right?
That would be an honor.
Okay, so you know, I'm married. I've been married 11 years. I remember planning and stressing about the proposal, and you know, we were my wife and I were very much in the like marriage space. We were talking about it a lot. We knew we were both in that space, ready to take that next step. So I knew that if I asked, she would say yes. but it was still so nerve-wracking. So Harman, walk me through this. How did you think that in front of 3,000 people, this is it, this is the one, I know she's gonna love it? Talk to me.
Yeah, man, I totally feel you with the stress and the planning, and I think it's very underrated. So any guy that's ever done a proposal, like, give yourself a pat on the back, because well deserved. Yeah, you know, like for me, like, I just wanted it to be something that you know, meant something, right? Like I felt like there was lots of kind of easy, like I shoot weddings for work. So I feel like I've seen a lot of it, right? Like I've seen all of them. I've seen anything you can imagine. But for us, like, hockey's always been such a big part of our whole relationship, I think, right? Like we went to see a Team Canada and Russia World Junior game, like, as one of our first dates. That was one of our first major dates. And then yeah, we all like love watching hockey together. I've always obviously been a diehard, like, kind of Canucks fan since I can remember. Like, there's, you know, pictures of me in 94 in diapers watching the finals and all that kind of stuff. So you know, it just kind of made sense, especially with them coming home. Like, you know, we're both born and raised in Abbotsford. Kind of love the city. This is where we grew up. I've moved away for 4 or 5 years, living in Burnaby and in Surrey, but recently moved back home, and the team moved back here. I actually used to work for the Abbotsford Heat, so I kind of had some connections, and I made some.
Okay, all right. Now we're getting the pieces of the puzzle. Okay.
Yeah, and then
you had to communicate. You just you called up the people you knew at the Abbotsford Canucks, and you're like, "Hey, I'm going to the first game. I want to propose. What do you think?" And they were like, "Yeah, let's do it." Like, how did other people on board?
Yeah, I mean, it's even a little more rich than that, I think. But when I first started working for the Abbotsford Heat, I was actually just a student at BCIT, just trying to get my foot in the broadcast industry doors, just trying to figure out where to go, what I'm doing. And the game presentation manager there, Jen, was actually the person who kind of led me to my first ever broadcast job. So I had no idea it would still be her. I just sent an email to the generic Abbotsford Canucks email, who can help me? This is what I'm kind of thinking. Is this possible?
Is that Jen Graham?
It is, yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Mm-hmm.
It is, yeah. And she was able to work with me, and there were a lot of strings to get through with COVID, with restrictions, with all the things that have to kind of come together. And I was really thankful to have their support, and they helped bring it all together.
Now, Alisha, you're a little girl, you're imagining your proposal, you're in love, this wonderful, you're like, I know it, we're in the marriage space. He's going to propose at some point. Were you imagining something?
Honestly, yes, because he's because he's always told me that hockey is his first love, and I can't get between him and hockey. And so
hockey's his first love. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that has since obviously changed as you've grown up, right, Harman? I mean.
Yes, of course.
Okay, good. Perfect. Yeah. Sorry, Alisha, go on.
Just
don't ask guys at the rink,
So Alisha, I'm going to put on my Oprah hat here. How long have you guys been together? And when did you kind of get the idea that maybe this guy's going to propose to me?
We've been together for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Almost 4. And I don't know, we've always just kind of had the end goal be marriage and long term, and we kind of just it was really funny at the beginning of a relationship, we're kind of the same person. It's a little scary. So we've always kind of worked towards that. And
Did you have any indication he was gonna ask that day? Was he oh, you have to come to this game?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, okay. So no, I didn't know that it was going to happen, but there were so many weird things, looking back, being wow, I could have caught on to that, or I could have caught on to this. Earlier that day, he told me I need to wear makeup to the game, which he never told me to wear makeup to a hockey game. Sometimes he doesn't even do you even notice? He probably doesn't even notice, but that morning he tells me, make sure you're wearing your makeup. So I'm just already kind of why are you why? But then and then I he got tickets for my parents to be there, and my sister and her boyfriend, and then his friend. So I was kind of just maybe just small town Abbey things that everybody just doesn't have anything to do on the Sunday night, and they're all at this hockey game. But then later I figure out that they're actually there because he's doing this and he's proposing. So I could have caught on to these little things, and I normally do. But just this time I was completely surprised.
Wow, that was some good planning, actually.
So Alisha, walk me through then. You're in the game, you're wearing your jersey, you're having a good time, you're surrounded by strangers, and then things start happening. When did you realize what was going on?
Literally, when he was down on one knee. I still had no clue, because the smile of the game thing went on the screen, and then he's like, stand up, like let's get into the smile of the game. And I was like, no, sit down. Like, I'm not standing up. So I was like, the whole time he's like trying to tell me to stand up and like, let's try to get on it. And I'm just not. I'm like, no, like you need to sit down. I don't want to stand up, whatever. Why are we standing up? And then finally I'm like, okay, fine, we'll stand up, stop making a scene. And then I look up to the screen, and that's where I see him like down on one knee. And then I turn over and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And yeah, it just happened like so fast. And it was like the whole rest of the game, I was like, what just happened? What is going on?
That is so awesome.
So Tim, for up on the screen, they had this thing. It was bizarre. I've never seen anything like it before. It said, show your smile of the game. And everyone's wearing masks. So the instructions were, pull your mask down and show your teeth, like show your smile. And I was sitting there watching it. I'm like, what on earth is going on here? Like, we're in a pandemic. Why are they encouraging people to like take their mask off and smile? And then it cut to them. And then she explained what happened. So it was bizarre.
So Harman, we've seen the stadium proposal before. We've seen it in movies. We've seen it, they go viral, right? You see them on Twitter and YouTube and that sort of thing. And we have seen some that don't go well. So was there a percent, just like a sliver, like a 1% in the back of your mind, like, oh man, this could be bad?
Oh man, with all the factors in play, honestly, it was there. Like it was just like a weird, like kind of just like a casual Sunday, like it's just like, oh, like whatever, like nothing's happening. And yeah, you definitely have that thought in the back of your mind, like, oh, imagine if I drop the ring and then I'm like going through people's seats, like trying to get in or something. Like, oh man, there were a couple of sleepless nights in there trying to think about like what could happen for sure.
Yeah, were you considering backing out at any point? Because like no one else in the building, like I was completely confused when this thing was going on, the smile thing. You could have very easily just sat back down and pretended, like nothing's going on. Did that
definitely some nerve, especially when I jumped the gun a little bit. I think that's what happened. Was like the plan was the smile of the game was going to come on. They were going to show a couple people in the crowd, and then the spotlight hits us. They come to us, and then I was supposed to get up and do it, right? Yeah. But for the whole reason in my mind, I just had like, oh, but like she has to be standing. Like I gotta get her to stand. So as soon as the camera guy and the host and everybody with the sign, they came out and like into our section, and I was like, oh, she's not standing. Like, and I'm like trying to pull her arm. I'm like, stand up. And yeah, it worked out great at the end.
So how many people do you think knew that you were going to propose before your now fiance knew?
Oh, good question.
Oh, she wants to know the answer to that one too. So I like after the actual proposal at the game, like she thought we were just going for dinner, but I walked her into a restaurant full of her family and some of her friends and stuff, and our friends.
Yeah.
So all the people there knew, so you can count like about a 30-person dinner we had, so you can count that. And then the people at the game, so altogether maybe 40, 50 people probably knew about it other than myself.
Wow.
I don't know if he's still pulled off that surprise though with like 40 or 50 people.
Yeah, it just goes to show that we don't hang out with our friends anymore, right? Because of the pandemic. Otherwise, someone would have let it slip, right?
Totally.
Definitely, yeah. I was worried about that because this one tends to go in detective mode and figure out her facts.
Yeah, that's why you got to move fast, right? Once you got to get in there. I know that for I remember being in that time where all of your friends are getting engaged and everyone's. You have to tell the story over and over again. How did he propose? How did he propose? And you have to tell the story over and over again. You guys have like a really cool story you get to tell now, which is awesome.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the best part, right? That's the best part of going through all the stress. And I think probably the one part that gets a little bit, maybe not as much attention because of the whole arena thing is the people in the arena. Like right after it happened, the reception we had, from not only the people in our own section who are like giving high fives, people are excited, they're all happy, and we're walking around the concourse at the end of the second, and even after the end of the game, and like we couldn't go 3 seconds without somebody being like, "Hey, you're those guys! Like, congrats! Like, oh, that's so cool!"
We were like walking to our truck at the end of the game, and we're on the street, and like people were honking their like horns and like out of their windows, like just so happy. And it was just like people we didn't even know, and that was super cool.
It was super nice. Lots of love for the city of Abbotsford and the people of Abbotsford, the people who made it out to the game, whether you're from Abbey or not. I guess just kind of coming together and making it an even more special moment for us.
It's one of those things. I think proposals, weddings, I mean, just love in general. Like, it doesn't matter how like cynical you are or like how like, how unromantic you are. When you see real love and you see these moments of love in public, you can't help but smile, right? You can't help be excited. And that's really cool that you guys, you had this moment, and it's really about you two and you're sharing it with each other. But it's sort of cool that you shared it with all these other people too, and they all got to have like their day brightened by your love.
It's a win-win-win if you ask me.
Yeah.
And now you get to be on the Abbotsford Farm Podcast. Like, that's an even bigger deal.
Win-win-win-win.
Huge news. Now, before you guys go, I talked about stories of how people propose and that sort of thing. I remember when I was in my 20s, I heard a story of like a friend of a friend who proposed to his fiance, and they're still married. So, but he put the ring in a box of chicken McNuggets. So there's lots of different ways to do it.
Oh man, that would be awesome. Except I don't know if she'd ever let me have chicken nuggets again after that. So that's a risk I'm not willing to take.
Could you imagine telling that story over and over again? You'd lie. You'd change the story. Harman and Alisha, thank you so much for coming on and walking us through and telling us about your big day. Obviously, we wish you all the luck in the world, and thank you so much. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for having us. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. Thanks for the chat, and good luck with the podcast. Looking forward to listening in the future and supporting it.
That was Harman and Alisha, the happy, newly engaged Abbotsford Canucks fans. It's just, they talked about like people leaving and like honking and, being excited for them. And I'm going to be honest, my wife would be mortified if I like proposed to her at a stadium. She would say no. She would just say no. And then we would talk about it later. If I tried to propose to her at a stadium. Like, do you remember that video of the guy who proposed at a stadium and then she said no?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Brutal stuff. But I'm so happy that it worked out for them, and it brought like a real sense of happiness to that second home game, which was so cool. Now I wouldn't want it to happen every game. I feel like that would be weird if it every weekend there's another proposal. But this one was special for sure.
You were in your element in that interview, I have to say. That was totally, you were into that, I could tell.
Listen, I like when people are in love. Obviously, I have a personal experience with proposing and how how nerve-wracking it can be. So I really understood where Harman was coming from. Although, again, I would never have done it in a stadium full of people. But hey, we're different people, right, Ben? You just do things your own way. Fill your boots, right?
And how cool was it that they were from Abbotsford? That was another thing. Like I had no idea. Like I followed him on Twitter as well. There's no indication that he's from Abbotsford, or I didn't know her at all. So like, how crazy is it that they were both from Abbotsford too?
Lucky. I love it. Now we talked a bit last week about hot dogs.
Oh God.
I don't want to get too much into it, but generally I've been told people like to have ketchup on their hot dogs, and we'll just move on from that. Anecdotally, you were in the wrong. I was in the right. We don't need to talk about it too much more, but the food continues to be a subject for the Abbotsford Canucks, because it was making the rounds that Trent Cull has lately been complaining that he hasn't been able to find any good bagels, which I can relate to, because if you've been to New York or Montreal, you know good bagels, right? Like those are that's a different animal out there. And so, you know, the team has been getting Tim Hortons bagels, which are totally fine. They're doable, but they're not on the same level, right? They're not on the same level. And so a local Abbotsford business reached out, right? Is that what happened?
Yeah. Well, basically what happened, let me take you back, is that we were, some of the media was asking Trent about, you know, how are you going to celebrate the shutout? And he said, we have a tradition. He's brought it back from Utica. It's called breakfast bagels. So whenever there's a shutout, he buys the entire team. I guess everybody gets a bagel. So that discussion went to Twitter, and then it was revealed that he went to Tim Hortons, which, I don't know. I'm not a huge bagel fan personally myself. So I don't know if they're any great quality, Tim Hortons, but apparently Good Kid Coffee, which is a new cafe which just opened in February, they claim to have the best bagels in Abbotsford. They reached out, they offered free bagels to Trent and the team, and I think he went there yesterday and he got a free one. So, and it sounds like the reviews have been good. He enjoyed it.
I love it. I love bagels. I love free food. I love local businesses. Those are the things that I love. And this is awesome.
We were talking too, like whatever happened to, and I don't know if you remember it, but Great Canadian Bagel. Do you remember that place?
Yes, but I don't think I ever went there.
They just disappeared though. They were pretty big for a while, like sometime in the mid 90s, I think. And then disappeared. That when I think bagels, that's what I think. Great Canadian Bagel. But I'm not sure where a good place to get bagels is, but I am going to try get Good Kid Coffee now.
Do it. Reviews. Yeah, do it. Now the best bagels I ever had were in Montreal. We went for a family trip before we went for before COVID happened. Pre-COVID summer before COVID. And we were in Montreal, and, you know, you hear all about the bagels in Montreal. So I went to this place, St. Viateur Bagels, on Mount Royal Avenue. And I went down there, and it's like me and my son went. It was like 7 a.m, and they're taking these things out of this huge oven.
Oh my God.
And they've got this like giant, honestly, it's this like bin of like the hot bagels. So the guy gives them to me, throws them in a paper bag. I bring them back, and I kid you not, Ben, it was the greatest bite of food I put in my mouth in the history of human existence. It was unbelievable. And
was it still like warmish kind of?
Yeah, but I threw it in the toaster. I put some cream cheese on it, and it was, I can't even describe it. It was one of those things that, you know, you go somewhere and there are places and they're like, oh, you got to try this. Go there and you try it. And then you try it and you're like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. This was like, they're like, go there and try these bagels. And then I tried them, and my expectations were like sky high, right? And it blew my expectations away. And I've even looked up getting those bagels, because they'll ship them to you.
Oh, no way.
Like, you know, shipped to us. But then you end up paying it ends up being like $60 for, you know, a couple dozen bagels, which is a bit steep. I'm not sure if the Abbotsford Canucks, there is the team in Laval. Maybe you're a huge AHL guy now. So maybe you want to go to Laval, the Laval Rocket. You want to go do some scouting. Just go on a road trip out to Quebec and pick up some bagels. Listen, the only reason I go to Granville Island is to get Lee's Donuts. So I'm not like outside of going somewhere just for food. Well, I'm looking March 4th and March 5th. The Abbotsford Canucks go to Laval. So maybe we can hook that up somehow. Maybe. I have to talk to Trent. Maybe Trent can get some bagels for you, but get us on the bus. Yeah, get us on the bus out there. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for the continued support. Everyone who's listening, we really appreciate it. Make sure you share, subscribe, just get on board. We're also make sure you're checking out abbeynews.com for your post-game, pre-game, all your Abbotsford Canucks news you need is right there. The big papers aren't sending people to the rink every single day. They're not covering all the action around the Abbotsford Canucks. So the best place for you to get Abbotsford Canucks news up to date is the abbeynews.com. And of course, you'll get that info from Ben Lypka here.
Absolutely. And make sure to follow our podcast on social media at Abbey Farm Pod, where the Twitter's been blowing up lately. So
well, hey, listen, I mean, great content.
must
Great
see,
content.
must watch, must see, must listen. You have to.
Absolutely.
But we really do appreciate all the support online, and it's been nice to see.
And if there's anything you guys want us to talk about, anything you want us to cover about the team, let us know. We are super interested in covering all things about the team, not just the on-ice product, but everything else around the team as well. So we'll hope to bring you more of that, and we'll see you again next week. See ya.